Hello students, my name is Arjinder Kaur and I am Assistant Professor in Postgraduate Government College Sector 11 Chandigarh. In this module, we will be discussing India's relation with many of the West Asian countries. These West Asian countries have been into relationship with India for a very long time historically, as well as, for example, Iran, Iraq, Egypt, Afghanistan, etc. In these countries, India has been involved historically at the cultural fronts. But the relationship with West Asian countries has developed and has gained more significance since the inception of the oils and the reserves that these countries hold. With the passage of time and with the National Conference on Oppressed Nationalities and Nehru's involvement in the Pan-Asiatic Federation has brought the countries of West Asia and India very close to each other. Also, the resources in these countries, oil reserves and the weak political institutions of these countries have been playing very important role in terms of other countries interfering into the countries of West Asia. And considering the global politics, it becomes very important for India also to involve itself closely with the countries of West Asia and harness as many as resources as possible from this region. Objectives. Through this module, an effort will be made to apprise the students about the real nature of India's West Asia policy. It is a well-known fact that a country's foreign policy does not evolve all of a sudden. Rather, it is a product of numerous factors and forces. Bilateral ties between India and the countries of West Asia are no exception to this phenomenon. Therefore, it becomes imperative to understand and evaluate the historical perspective about the origin of their relationship. Besides, this is also important to know about the issues of convergences and divergences in these years. Historical evolution. India and West Asia have great civilization contacts in history. As Indus Valley civilization and Mesopotamian civilization and the Nile Delta civilization in Egypt were not stranger to each other at that time. From the advent of Islam to British period, these contacts were further groomed and became richer and deeper. In pre-independence period, Nehru participated in the Congress of Oppressed Nationalities with his idea of Pan-Asiatic Federation. These were the clues of close affinity between the nationalist organizations in Asia. These efforts brought the leaders of freedom struggle in these countries all together. The Khilafat movement and the wide response it evoked in Indian freedom struggle served to bring India and these countries of West Asia closer. Besides, as we mentioned earlier, delegations from Tunisia, Egypt and Palestine attended the annual Congress sessions throughout the 1930s and later. The Indian National Congress coordinated with fellow Asian nationalist organizations and lent them a helping hand. All these initiatives reflected the historically close ties between India and the West Asia. It is significant to note that these contacts gave the birth of India the idea of non-alignment in post-Second World War period. Although all the sovereign states were settling their objectives on the basis of their own national interests, but the idea of non-alignment made these countries very comfortable in contemporary politics. With this understanding of the brief history of relations between India and the countries of West Asia, it was certain that both India and these countries would start positively in mutual ties in post-Second World War period. The West Asia was still important due to numerous reasons in this changed scenario. The 5 broad reasons which compelled India for cordial relations with West Asia are as under. Geographical proximity and its direct bearings, demographic assimilation and its impact, political happenings and their implications, convergence on the major issues of international politics, changed regional economic scenario. This study is divided in the following parts according to different changes occurred that from time to time. Period of friendship from 1947 to 1961. Period of assessing each other from 1962 to 1971. Change towards cordial ties from 1972 to 1978. Period of New Cold War and Changing Parameters 1979 to 1991. Post-Cold War period and continuity in relation to 1992 to 1999. Drastic Changes with Contradictions from 2000 onwards. Period of Friendship. India's relation with the countries began with mutual respect and understanding in this period. The reasons behind this were domestic as well as international milieu. In post-Second World War period, a new type of world politics emerged. Cold War had begun at world stage due to bipolar policies of two superpowers, USA and Soviet Union. It had created a complicated situation for newer sovereign states like India and the countries of West Asia. India had adopted the policy of non-alignment with its inception. It was based on the principles of anti-colonialism, anti-racialism, and firm support to the national movement in newer states. Besides, India was against the role of military blocs in international relations. This policy paid dividends as India not only improved its relations with Egypt, Syria, Iran, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia, but also found success to contain nefarious activities of countries like Pakistan. The latter was trying hard to take benefits after becoming member of military blocs like CENTO or SEATO. India and the countries of West Asia showed much cordial understanding on contemporary issues in this period and developed better ties in political, economic, and strategic affairs. India was the firm believer of all Arab unity as reflected in its policy towards Palestine movement. The former had rejected the creation of separate Jewish state in Palestine and voted against UNSCOP's plan of creating separate state of Israel. India voted against the entry of Israel to United Nations in 1949. India had not only been maintaining its stand of return the Palestinian refugees to their home in wake of the Israeli occupation at their territories since then, but also provided financial contribution to them. Besides, Nehru's personal chemistry with the top leader of Arab world like Nasser of Egypt had also created the common understanding on the emerging issues. This convergence further consolidated on the issues of Palestine movement, Swiss war, and Algeria's self-determination. Most of the countries in West Asia are Islamic states, but never emphasized on any pan movements. Nasser in Egypt, Shah in Iran, and Saudi leadership were against any type of revival of Islam on fundamentalist approach in their respective countries. On the other hand, although India declared itself a secular state by constitution, but never took anti-Muslim stand due to its demographic compulsion. In Arab-Israel conflict, India always took stand in favor of Arab world in United Nations and other platforms. Besides, India played an active and constructive role on the issues of Palestine movement, Suez war, and Algeria's self-determination. Entire Arab world greatly appreciated Indian approach in these matters. All these initiatives created an environment of cordial relations between India and West Asia. Period of assessing each other. India's policy towards West Asia had faced the challenging situation in this second phase. India fought three wars, 1962, 1965 and 1971, with its neighbors, whereas Arab-Israel War 1967 proved to be the litmus test for mutual relations. India faced an embarrassing situation as few Arab countries, including Egypt, remained silent on Sino-Indian War. In the Indo-Pak Wars, situation became more critical when most of the Arab countries only supported Pakistan. India found itself in an isolated situation in West Asia. On the question of Bangladesh, Arab world criticized Indian approach and took stand in favor of Pakistan. These happenings brought the Indo-West Asian ties down to lowest level ever. In the Arab-Israel War 1967, India's stand remained in favor of Arab world despite their arrogance in earlier stages. India had not only opposed Israel but also took part actively in peacekeeping forces for maintaining peace in this fragile region. India extended its support to Arab world and expressed desire to participate in the Islamic Summit 1969, but it was not allowed to participate in it due to undesirable reasons. This situation brought a setback to India's initiatives in this region and created some distance between bilateral ties. Change towards cordial ties. This period had witnessed the drastic changes in this region. This had direct bearings on India-West Asia ties. They had to change their outlook in their foreign policies also. Arab-Israel War 1973 had changed the entire parameters of international relations. Due to external powers' intervention, this war had transformed into a regional war. The role of Pakistan in this war was a bit dubious in West Asian perception. In this situation, India became an ultimate choice for Arab countries due to its non-aligned posture. It is significant to note that non-alignment had the roots in India-West Asia friendship. By the beginning of the 1970s, non-alignment movement had established its relevance in the power politics. Arab-Israel War 1973 had brought the countries of West Asia closer to this policy of positive neutrality in international relations. Oil game had already been started with the Arab-Israel War 1973 in this region. The countries of West Asia had also started to use oil as political weapon. It had the direct bearing on India's foreign economic policy as it is heavily dependent on the imports from this region. Energy needs demanded more constructive policy from Indian side. It made India to follow more consistent policy towards West Asia. With the death of President Nasser in 1970, regional politics in West Asia took a new dimension. Arab nationalism was pushed behind the curtains and Islamic ideology came to the fore by the active policies of Saudi Arabia. It again forced India to change its policy towards West Asia. India made efforts to cultivate its ties with all the countries. Economic initiatives replaced the political contents in bilateral relations between India and these countries of Western Asia. India had adopted long-term strategies to nugget the negative fallouts on the import of oil and its politics. Besides, India made efforts bilaterally as well as on multilateral levels to manage trade balances. India and Iran agreed to diversify its trade according to demands of bilateral level in these years. The same was also sought to be achieved by signing Treaty of Trade with Egypt. India-Egypt-Yugoslavia triangle was also proving beneficial in this direction. All these three countries renewed their partnership treaty in the years of 1973 and 1978 continuously. India had also developed its economic ties with Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, Oman, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Libya in this decade. India and these countries had started to collaborate in joint industrial undertakings, service sector, advisory services, and payment based on easy lines. Period of new Cold War and changing parameters. Soviet intervention in Afghanistan in 1979 had changed all the parameters of international relationship. It brought the new Cold War very next doorstep to India. India and West Asia ties had also serious implications of this sudden strategic environment. Besides, in Iran, fundamentalist Islam came to forefront after Shah regime. Iran-Iraq war further aggravated the critical situation in West Asia in the decade of 1980s. All these happenings had great ramifications for India's policy towards West Asia. New Cold War had started with Soviet intervention in Afghanistan 1979. On the other hand, United States of America had actively participated in West Asia through regional groupings. GCC and RDF became the center of attraction for US policymakers. Besides, it had also strengthened its military position at its base camp of Basra, Oman, and Diego Garcia. This strategic scenario reduced India's policy options to the minimal. This changed scenario had proved Pakistan a new role of strategic partner of USA in this region. With active role of US, Pakistan also became the partner of GCC and RDF. Pakistan established its economic and military ties with the countries of these organizations and USA. Pakistan emerged as the key partner of USA in this strategic battlefield. India's policy towards West Asia again found no space in this changed scenario. This made India again rethink about its policy option. It used political and economic diplomacy to make some road in West Asia. Besides, India had also made efforts to improve its relations with USA and Pakistan. India is heavily dependent on the import of oil from West Asia to fulfill its energy needs. Any strategic change and fragile scenario in West Asia has direct bearings on India's interests. This compels India to always look towards peace and stability there for smooth transaction of oil. Besides, these countries have the huge money from oil export. Cordial relations will pave the way for foreign direct investment. Hence, India always makes efforts to strengthen their ties with these countries. India's objectives also lies here due to huge strength of Indians residing in West Asia. Total strength of Indian engineers, doctors, nurses, advisors and laborers approximately 20 lakh. Working there since 1994. They were sending approximately value of Rs 7,800 crores foreign currencies to India every year according to annual report of 1994-1995. It again made India to secure their citizens there. Hence, India's foreign policy has always been busy in strengthening its relations with the countries of West Asia. Post-Cold War period and continuity in relationship. With the demise of Soviet Union and the end of Cold War, international relations had once again seen drastic changes. India's relations with the countries of West Asia were no more exception to it. It had to work from fresh outlook in its foreign policy. India had to face many situations in the beginning of the decade of 1990s. The end of Cold War with the demise of erstwhile Soviet Union had changed the basic parameters of international politics. Peace process had also started between Israel and Palestinian Liberation Organization in West Asia with the direct initiatives taken by USA. Both the sides agreed for peaceful settlement of this problem till 1998. As earlier discussed, stable West Asia has been India's prime objective since the oil game started. This peace process had also provided India an opportunity to strengthen political, economic and strategic ties with West Asia. The demise of USSR had also given birth to the idea of New World Order in which United States of America as sole superpower would influence the international politics. The Gulf War proved these assumptions right when US-led NATO forces took offensive against Iraq. Israel and even some Arab countries including Saudi Arabia took part in this war from same side of US-led forces. India found the situation very critical as reflected from contradictory approach at domestic level. In political uncertainty, minority government decided to give permission to US fighter planes for refueling from Bombay, but it had to take back the track with the withdrawal of permission under the domestic pressure. This gave a big setback to India's regional aspirations. The demise of Soviet Union gave birth to new entities on world stage, including the countries of Central Asia. In all the 5 republics, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan, majority of people had the belief in the religion of Islam. The countries of West Asia had started to assess this region on the base of Islamic fraternity. This gave the rise of competitive influence-building activities in this region. Besides, these countries had the rich potential in natural resources. Other external powers like USA, Russia, and China also got engaged with this region. This strategic scenario had the direct bearing on India's foreign policy. In the absence of direct transport access, India had to collaborate with the like-minded countries in West Asia like Iran, Oman and Turkey to get access in this region. North-South corridor and the use of Iranian ports, Bandar Abbas and Chabar for trade facility were the true examples of changed India's foreign policy. India was also adopting changed economic process of open market and foreign direct investment in the light of globalization. It had made efforts to remove barriers in economic interactions. Besides, India had signed bilateral trade treaties with Bahrain, Iraq, Kuwait, Iran, Turkey, Saudi Arabia and UAE to explore available opportunities. India focused on the export to these countries for balance of trade, as India found it against due to oil import. India wanted to attract petrodollar as FDI in Indian market, hence it was ready to provide all types of facilities to the investors of these countries. Drastic Changes with Contradictions. India's policy towards West Asia in the 21st century had witnessed drastic changes. Terrorist attack on US Trade Tower, US retaliation and war against terror in Afghanistan, war against Iraq and demise of Saddam Hussein and Syrian crisis and emergence of much-talked ISIS were the key issues that demanded the constructive response from India's foreign policy. On the issue of disarmament and chemical weapons, US and its allies invaded Iraq in 2003. India's response was a bit of ambiguous, although India had already signed UN resolution of disarming and for the search of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq in 2002. But India remained reluctant on US demand of sending army to Iraq due to internal pressure. After the demise of Saddam Hussein, India not only supported all the UN resolutions regarding Iraq, but also provided economic assistance of $20 million for construction activities in this country. West Asia has been remaining an area of priority in India's foreign policy since its inception, but there was no space for Israel in it due to India's internal dynamics. It had opposed the UN resolution of partition of Palestine on the basis of religion in 1948. India had been a great supporter of Arab world since then, but in the decade of 1990s, the ice started to melt down with Israel. PLO Peace Agreement. India established its full diplomatic relations with Israel in 1992. After that, there was a great deal of reciprocal visits between the two, but could not reach on desirable height due to political constraints. It was the period of NDA government led by Atal Bihari Vajpayee when some serious initiatives were taken to improve ties with Israel. India's relation with Israel have been expanding since then rapidly. Its Prime Minister visited India in 2003. Agreements were signed in the areas of defense, agriculture, trade and security related issues. India launched an Israel spy satellite into orbit from its space station. Besides, Israel has also expressed interest in participating in India's Chandrayaan mission to Moon. Israel is India's second largest arms supplier at present. Both India and Israel share intelligence and counter-terrorist tactics in these years. India is regarded as Israel's strongest ally in Asia in 21st century. After the demise of Saddam Hussein, it was assumed that peace and stability would be settled in the entire West Asia, but it remained a miracle as Syrian crisis emerged on the fore. UN sanctions against Syria on the issue of chemical weapons once again alarmed the bell of danger. US-led forces under the UN flag took the offensive against Syria but could not settle the issue due to ambiguous role of other stakeholders. And sudden emergence of Islamic State of Iraq and Syria made the strategic situation more complicated. All these happenings have the great impact not only on West Asia but also on global politics. For India, this situation was not new. It has been working according to its national interests since then. It vacated the Indian nationals from war-torn area of Iraq with success. New regime under Narendra Modi is trying to access this region with more constructive and long-term policies. India's trade with West Asia is showing bright picture in trade activities in the 21st century. Total trade between India and the countries of West Asia was of Rs 31,09,457 lakhs in the financial year of 1999 to 2000. It reached all-time high in the financial year of 2013 to 14 with a total trade of Rs 118281,809 lakhs with the import of Rs 811,67,305 lakhs and export of Rs 371,1450 lakhs. Although trade data shows the huge trade imbalance against India, the only reason is energy import, as India is the second largest energy importer from West Asia. Let me conclude this module by saying that India and the countries of West Asia are having very good relationship in terms of economic and cultural ties. India has been supporter of Arab countries for a very long time against Palestine, against Israel as well. And India is also the largest importer of oil, raw oil from these countries. Considering this situation, it becomes very important for India to have close ties with the countries of West Asia. And recently also, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been showing keen interest in having good relationship and good ties with the countries of West Asia, on which a lot of policies have been in the pipeline. And at the end, we are hoping to have more bilateral ties and multilateral ties with the countries of West Asia, so that we can end up harnessing the resources of the region. Thank you.